Could we start the housekeeping, please?
Thank you for participating in today's meeting. If attending in person, please do not connect to Zoom or teleconference while in the room, and please silence all devices. If translation is provided, click on the globe at the bottom of your screen to select either English or Spanish. Public comment will be taken after each item. If you're in the auditorium and wish to comment, please use the iPads located in the lobby or complete a blue speaker card as available. If you need assistance, please find a South Coast AQMD employee. Speakers may be limited to a total of 3 minutes or less for all agenda items. Times may be shortened to ensure all speakers can be heard. A countdown timer will be displayed on the screen for each public comment. More time will be allotted for Spanish translation that is not simultaneous. For questions or issues on making a public comment, please call the public advisor at 909-396-2432. That's 909-396-2432. Please adhere to the speaker time limit and treat others with courtesy, civility, and respect. Failure to do so can result in your mic being muted or you being removed from the meeting. Be aware that this meeting is being recorded. By participating, you authorize recording of audio and visual content presented during the live event and consent to subsequent use of the recording in the public domain by South Coast AQMD.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to today's Technology Committee meeting. We'll go ahead and take our roll call.
Supervisor Hagman? Okay.
I think he stepped away, but be here momentarily.
Okay. Mayor Locke Dawson? Absent. Mayor McCallum?
Here.
Board Member Padilla Campos?
Here.
Supervisor Wagner?
I'm here.
And Chair Rodriguez?
Here.
Okay, thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Again, I'd like to welcome my colleagues and everyone that's here and watching online to today's Technology Committee meeting. We'll start off with our action items for today, starting item 1, execute contract to develop and demonstrate zero-emission transport refrigeration unit with electric-powered trailer for heavy-duty vehicles. And we have a staff presentation. Please take it away. Good afternoon.
Do I need to push? Good afternoon. Okay. Afternoon, Chair, member of the committee. I'm Sam Chow. I'm a program supervisor in the Technology Demonstration Group. I'll be here to bring the first item to execute contract to develop and demonstrate zero-emission transport refrigeration units with the electrified power trailer for heavy-duty vehicles. We're already on the next slide. Thank you. Transport refrigeration unit, short for TRU. They are this little temperature control device that's typically fitted to in front of a box truck that's delivering temperature-sensitive goods or to in front of the tractor trailer. These devices are typically powered today by a diesel engine. In fact, ARB, the CARB already start to require truck-mounted TRUs to go to zero, start to transition to zero emission. However, still 80% of the TRU today in California are trailer-mounted. Trailer-mounted TRUs are inherently more difficult to electrify. There's several reasons why. It's more complex to add a reliable source of energy to use for the TRU units. This has added weight and operational requirements that requires additional charging infrastructure as well as costs. In addition, even though electric TRU technology do exist today, but there's still demonstration needed to validate the viability of using zero-emission TRU before the fleet can get comfortable and start to risk the potentially temperature-sensitive load. Back in 2023, the board approved the project with Range Energy. We have developed an electrified trailer with the energy storage on board as well as electric motors. This electric motor allows hybridization of the trailer. It can regenerate power when it slows down or provide power assist when the vehicle speeds up. This provides considerable emissions and fuel benefit to the tractor, either zero emission or diesel. But for this project, we're looking to integrate a zero emission TRU to the Range Energy technology. Next slide. So the proposal from Range Energy as well as San Joaquin Valley Air District, Thermo King and UV is to together to provide a demonstration and validation of zero emission TRU integrated with Range Energy's regenerated electrified trailer technology. Thermo King, like you see here, they'll be providing the zero emission TRU as well as integration support. UV will be providing the charger to the fleets. Range Energy will be responsible for integrating the TRU to a new refrigerator trailer, also developing the algorithm to support the use of TRU on top of its hybrid trailer. The demonstration will be happening in two parts, one with a grocery delivery fleet in the San Joaquin Valley area, and another one in the South Coast Air Basin for quick service restaurant operations delivery. The demonstration will be up to 3 months each for a total of up to 6 months. Next slide. The total project cost is roughly $740,000 with a requested amount of $111,000 from South Coast AQMD. San Joaquin Valley APCD's contribution will be contracted separately directly with Range Energy, and they'll be responsible for the demonstration in San Joaquin Valley area. Next slide. The recommended action is to execute a contract with Range Energy to demonstrate the electric TRU. Thank you. That's the presentation.
Thank you for your presentation, and colleagues, I'll take any questions that you might have. Mayor McCallum.
Thank you very much. The battery that will be powering the TRU is the same battery that's powering the truck, or a separate battery?
So the battery be a separate battery that's fitted to the Range Energy trailer. So the beauty of the Range Energy trailer is it has onboard energy storage and propulsion. So it can hybridize either a electric truck or a diesel truck, like I mentioned.
So how, assuming the truck is idling or park or whatever, how long does the battery last?
So it's roughly 200 kilowatt hour of capacity. So it's designed to operate a full day without being recharged. And the beauty of that, you can regenerate, right, when you slow down. So you get a recharge from the regenerate braking.
Yeah, I think it's a great concept. Thank you.
Great question. Any other questions, colleagues? Mayor Locke Dawson, welcome. Oh, I see your hand up virtually there, Mayor. Would you like to make a comment or question?
Yeah, I'm trying to make sure is my sound working?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, no, I think it's fantastic. It's time overdue. I know it's very expensive, but this is always what happens when we have new technology. And I would just like to move approval, move staff's recommendation when appropriate. Thanks.
Thank you. And we'll circle back on that motion for a potential second once we to also take public comment. Yes, board member.
Thank you for your presentation. Just curious, would this also work if the trailer is on rail? Or is it just on?
For this project, it's just for a tractor trailer. A rail one that's inherently a little bit more complicated. Yeah, this project just be on trailer.
Got it. Thank you.
Do we have other examples of this type of technology in use, or would this really be the first of its kind?
The project that the board approved in 2023 is indeed the first of its kind. We're potentially seeing RVs, electrified RVs as well, but for heavy duty truck operation, this is one of the first of its kind.
Fantastic. It's great to be on a trailblazing opportunity, and we'll see if do we have any public comments here at our headquarters or online?
Not seeing any hands raised online, so no public comment.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we'll go ahead and close public comment then. And we also have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing that none, we'll go ahead and call for the vote, please.
Supervisor Hagman, Mayor Locke Dawson,
Aye.
Mayor McCallum,
Yes.
Board Member Padilla-Campos,
Yes.
Supervisor Wagner,
Aye.
and Chair Rodriguez.
Yes.
Okay, item passes 6 ayes.
Thank you. One last question. As far as the timing of when we would be able to have a status report and the anticipated completion for being able to assess the success or areas that still need further refinement? Any thoughts on those timelines?
Yeah, Chair, actually, to your previous, I think you had mentioned this project when you first brought it to the committee. So they will be coming, the plan is to have them come next month to the
Okay,
committee
great.
and give an update on what they've done so far.
Mhm.
And this would be pre-TRU adding to this trailer.
Okay, and then as to the TRU component, when would we think we might be able to have an update? Or the timing of completion? Is there an estimated time on that?
So I was looking at Eric, sorry. The demonstration will happen as soon as summer of this month, but with a two-air district, we should expect a report by early next year.
Early next year. Okay, fantastic. Well, we'll look forward to those updates, and it's great to see the public-private partnership in funding this effort. We'll go ahead and move on to item 2, and thank you again for that report. I know we have some disclosures.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For agenda item number 2, I don't have a financial interest, but I am required to identify for the record that I am the chair of the Mobile Source Air Pollution Reduction Committee, which is involved in this item.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For agenda item number 2, I don't have a financial interest, but I identify for the record, I'm a member of the Mobile Source Air Pollution Reduction Committee, which is involved in this item.
Thank you for those disclosures. We'll go ahead and proceed then. Item 2, again, amend contracts for a joint electric truck scaling initiative pilot project and establish special revenue fund and recognize revenue for ports charging infrastructure projects. Looks like Scal, go ahead, take it away.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for introducing the project. In addition, I would like to say this agenda items for 2 separate projects, but although these 2 projects are separate, they're a lot similar in a lot of ways. They're both looking to advance drayage truck electrification and charging infrastructure. Secondly, they're both co-funded by South Coast AQMD, the MSRC, as well as Port of LA and Port of Long Beach. So with that, let's go to the next slide.
I'm sorry, MSRC is not providing any funds. We're just managing for the ports.
That. For the JETC project, it was approved back in 2021 by the board to looking at demonstrate Class A electric truck at scale. The project is to deploy up to 100 Class A battery electric trucks at 2 sites, really at scale. So 50 of those trucks went to the site with NFI in Ontario. And on the bottom here, you see another 50 went to the site with Schneider in South Almonte. These projects have been very successful. To date, all 100 trucks has been deployed and accumulating miles. You can see an important milestone we have as of December of 2024, over 4.7 million zero emission miles traveled to date, marking this one of the most successful projects for the zero emission transport. We also have the honor with Mr. Jeremy Hawk from Schneider. He'll be presenting his journey and Schneider's journey in particular for their JETC project as well as lessons learned. Next slide. So as the JETC project draws to an end, the NFI site unfortunately has been impacted by utility requirements. This led to project schedule delays as well as cost increases. Though this issue has been largely resolved, the final phase of the installation for NFI will start in February of 2025 with a May 2025 commissioning date. But with the 12-month data collection required by the agencies, this will take the project to end of 2026, resulting in additional project costs for implementation. As a proposal, staff is requesting to reallocate up to $974,000 from existing already recognized unused admin funds that Carbon CEC have allocated to South Coast AQMD to support tasks such as data collection by EPRI and CalSTAR, or workforce development, reporting, and outreach and communications by TRC companies. In addition, the funds will also be providing some relief to cover NFI's cost overruns on the infrastructure, as well as supporting Schneider for deploying additional chargers to increase the utilization of the JETC trucks. Because this is just transferring between the admin funds and the project funds, there has been no net change in grant funds. Carbon CEC have already approved those extension and allocations, and they're pending a formal receiving of the grant amendment. Next slide. Now we're switching gear to the port MOU item. For background for this item is back in September of 2022, the MSRC has released the RFI looking for partnership to advancing zero emission infrastructure for goods movement. Both ports, Port of LA, Port of Long Beach, have responded to the RFI, led to additional collaboration and execution of the MOU in 2024. As part of the MOU, the MSRC would be administering this project on behalf of the ports. They'll be installing more than 150 chargers at multiple locations with 4 different entities. The MSRC has already reviewed this item and recommended for award in January 16th of 2025. As a next step, in order to execute this contract, there's a need to establish a fund number recognizing the revenue from the ports and contract of the infrastructure providers. Next slide. The summary recommended action for the JETC is to authorize the executive officer upon receiving the formal grant agreement from Carbon CEC to amend 5 contracts for a total of $974,504 to cover these project implementation tasks from Fund 67. Next slide. The recommended action for the MOU projects is to establish Fund 92 and to recognize the revenue from Port of LA, Port of Long Beach, up to $24 million into Fund 92 to implement these projects. With that, I end the presentation. Take any questions.
Well, thank you. I'll open up to questions from our colleagues and start with Supervisor Hagman.
Just a comment. Love the demonstration projects. We review this MSRC, but just really, really surprised that they had problems getting energy to support these chargers, because it seems like that we're relying on Edison for all this stuff, and it did take a while, but being a little sarcastic, sorry.
Thank you, Supervisor. Are there any other questions or comments, colleagues? Okay. Well, then let's go ahead and see if we have any public comment. Anyone here or online?
We have one public commenter online, Ranji George.
Okay, let's open it up on that public comment online. Mr. Ranji George. Ranji, please go ahead.
Hello, board members. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on this. My name is Ranji George. I was a technology advancement supervisor and led the zero emission program in the late 90s. And I was in charge of both primarily hydrogen trucks and before that battery technologies. And I am disappointed that this motion being under consideration has no mention of hydrogen trucks and how much money has been set aside for hydrogen trucks. We need both technologies in parallel to see if one technology will survive the competition. Are there any other funds being used for hydrogen trucks and hydrogen infrastructure? If so, can we just add them all up and see how much both are receiving? We have been, for the hydrogen community has been asking for 50-50% balancing of all funds being spent on that way. We have both. We can encourage both technologies. We should not repeat the mistake what we did in between years 2000 and 2020, where 90% of the funds went to natural gas trucks, and hydrogen trucks and electric vehicle trucks didn't get very much funds at all. Now it's swung very sharply towards battery electric vehicles, and that's not fair. It's only continued to, the hydrogen trucks will lag behind battery trucks. The second thing is, are there any provisions to collect and dispose all the batteries from these trucks? There's hardly any mention about addressing the huge solid waste pollution that's emerging from these technologies. Hydrogen does not have such an issue. It is a clean technology at the end. So you're not including the cost of collecting and disposing these batteries in your technology provisions. The battery technology may be cheaper upfront, but when you add the disposable technology and the disposal factories that have to be built then you'll see that the hydrogen technologies will look much better. And these factories to recycle these batteries will be in the working class communities and not in the middle class communities. Because it's not in the middle class communities, that's the reason disposable of batteries are not being seriously considered here. Thirdly, I urge you to look at other technologies in batteries, especially lithium iron phosphates. It's much safer, and it's the materials for lithium phosphate batteries are much more widespread. The current technology, lithium ion, relies on nickel and cobalt.
Thank you for your comments. I don't see any other. Staff, am I overlooking any?
No
Oh,
additional
okay.
public
Move the
commenters.
item.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and close public comment. I have a motion from Mayor McCollum. Thank you, Supervisor, for the second. I just want to ask regarding the $974,000 regarding utility requirements regulation. Can you shed some light on that matter relative to PUC policy compliance and how that contributed to additional costs? I'm trying to understand more so on the current regulation and how it contributed to the additional costs.
Yeah, Chair, really the additional costs came from a couple things. We have switchgear prices over the duration of this project went up 4 to 12 times. Just there's a huge demand across the United States for this electrical switchgear. There was in this NFI project, it is a little different than the Schneider project. They are adding battery storage and solar. And because this project was so new under, the PUC existing regulations, the regulations weren't really built for transportation. So adding that battery storage and solar added more panels to the site. It hit one of the PUC rules, and it did not allow for Edison to pay under their charge-ready transport some of the funds we were expecting. So we were the first to encounter this, and our understanding is PUC is working on this to allow Edison to adapt their charge-ready transport program. But that's part of the reasons we do these projects is to shake these things out and understand what needs to change.
So are there going to be changes so that wouldn't occur again in the future? I'm just trying to, I think more from a commentary point, it should be whenever regulations can be updated to streamline or reduce costs, that would be much better than having outdated regulations that are in place that make it, as you mentioned, they weren't built for transportation. Well, they should be in this day and age. So
Yeah, we
anything can be
do.
done to make sure that that's going to be addressed.
Yeah, we do engage with the other agencies in the state. We've let them know about these problems. We hope we don't encounter this again, but we have additional projects we'll be undertaking, so we'll see.
Well, I appreciate hope. I'd rather have more clear assessment of the regulations that are encumbering us. So are there any specific recommendations staff can bring back at a later date? We may not be the ones that are front and center on changing those, but I would certainly like to shine a light on those problems and make sure that the regulatory changes are occurring so we don't have to, at least in part, have almost $1 million. I'm not saying that it was all because of that. Certainly it wasn't, but what can be done for us as the next step here? Because it's troublesome.
Yeah, we'll get back to you on some of these efforts that are being led to change these existing policies. And then also, another note on the cost increase with the switchgear is that we are seeing design changes now with these newer installations for these truck installations. There's more of a cookie cutter design now, whereas the early stages, it was very, engineered for each one specifically. So we're hoping to see more cost declines there for these newer installations.
Well, thank you. I look forward to considering those regulatory issues that we can address, and as well as happy to see our partnership on the MSRC taking on that is going to be quite a task so thanks staff in advance for those efforts. We'll go ahead and call for the vote.
Supervisor Hagman, Mayor Locke Dawson,
Aye.
Mayor McCallum,
Yes.
Board Member Padilla Campos,
Yes.
Supervisor Wagner,
Aye.
and Chair Rodriguez.
Yes.
Okay, item passes 6 ayes.
Thank you. We'll move to item 3, issue program announcement for lower emission school bus program. And we have a staff report.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Eugene Tan. I'm a program supervisor at the Technology Advancement Office here. Today, I'll be presenting on agenda item number 3, where we're looking to issue a program announcement to solicit for applications to replace older polluting school buses with zero emission buses under our lower emission school bus program. Next slide, please. Since the commencement of the lower emission school bus program, we have successfully replaced over 1,900 high polluting diesel school buses with cleaner school buses and retrofitted 3,400 diesel school buses with PM traps. This program, which uses various sources of funding such as AB 923 funds, has enabled thousands of school children to commute on some of the cleanest school buses available in the country. Next slide, please. Staff is proposing here today to issue a new program announcement to solicit for applications to replace model year 2005 or older combustion school buses. This includes diesel, CNG, and propane buses. For this solicitation, we will be focusing on zero emission school buses as a replacement. Some of the criteria to be eligible for the funding is that the old school bus will need to have a gross vehicle rating greater than 14,000 pounds and be owned by a public school district. One thing to remember here is that this is a replacement program. So the existing school bus will need to be dismantled as required by the lower emission school bus program guidelines. Next slide, please. So for this funding cycle, type A, C, and D school buses are eligible for funding. But as I mentioned before, the replacement will need to be a zero emission school bus. If you look on the slide, there is a photo for the type A, C, and D school buses there. On this table also on the slide shows the maximum funding amounts for each school bus with the option for school districts to select an additional $20,000 per school bus awarded to be used on supporting infrastructure. We are also allowing school districts to apply for additional funding from other programs such as HVIP and ZESB and Care for Kids. All funding sources, however, does need to be disclosed at the time of application for us, and staff will review it to determine if it can be stacked with this program. Next slide, please. As a recommended action, we are recommending to issue the program announcement for school bus replacements under the lower emission school bus program up to the amount of $45 million from the AB 923 funds and authorize the executive officer to execute contracts with the public school districts. That concludes my presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your report. And do we have any questions or comments, colleagues? Mayor McCallum.
Thank you very much,
Supervisor Hagman.
Mr. Chair. I assume the program announcement will go out to all the school districts in the Air Quality Management District region.
Yes, that's correct.
I was struck by when you said that they have to be owned by the school district. Some school districts contract with other providers to provide school buses. Those aren't eligible?
Currently, under the program guidelines for the low emission school bus program, it does require the school buses to be owned by the public school districts.
I'm curious as to how many school districts own their own buses.
Right now, I think just as a general estimate, there's still a large portion that still owns their own buses. And every year when we release this, we are oversubscribed.
Okay, the 20,000 allocated for infrastructure is not sufficient to do infrastructure. you know, if you get 10 buses, you've got $200,000. That's not going to put a dent into providing infrastructure for electrical buses.
So for the 20,000 is based off of the program guidelines, but we do understand that one thing we are doing is allowing for stacking of other incentive programs from the state as well as the federal level.
Thank you.
Great insights. Thank you, Mayor. Supervisor?
Thank you. And I love the program. A little curious on the advertising. It's on the same lines as Mayor McCallum is. I was looking at your comments here about the newspapers, which I really don't know how my school districts are reading the LA Times or the Orange County Register every day looking for a notice, but everybody does their stuff electronically. So I probably would just send them all an email. That's probably the best way of doing it. But since we're going to do the public agencies on this, and then you have an internal own electronic listing of certified minority vendors, the Black and Latino Legislative Caucus, various minority chambers, commerce, business associations. We're talking buses, and we just heard that it has to go to school districts to target certain groups and not just do an email blast to everybody. I just thought that was a little bit interesting. But the program's good. I don't know if anybody wants to comment on that, but
Yeah, point taken on that. But, to the note that Eugene mentioned earlier, we do send it directly to the school districts. And we'll have several email blasts to the school districts.
and I'm just wondering why the Black Latino caucuses can't even approach this program, or certain minority groups. Are they there to advocate the schools to know, or what's the logic behind that?
That's our procurement advertising. So that's kind of our standard template for what we advertise for with the RFPs.
Okay. I'm just saying that these are fixed objects. We're looking for the worst polluters, hopefully owned by the school districts that are willing to partner up with us to replace their things. So the best communication is directly with the school districts. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Any other comments, colleagues? Okay. Board Member Padilla Campos.
Thank you for your presentation. My daughter's school district, Sulphur Springs, has these, and it's always exciting to see the little green thing on the buses there. So I think this is a great project or program. And is the funding available every year, it gets replenished? Or is this a result of additional funding that you all applied for? I'm just curious.
So the funding that we use is the AB 923 funds, which is that additional $2 that we charge for DMV registrations.
So it does get
It
refunded,
does, yes.
We do,
replenished every year.
to your question, we do also issue this around every 2 to 3 years. So we get a pool of funds and then we issue it, the announcement.
Great. We're all kind of curious about who gets the distribution. Is it possible to come back once they've been awarded and inform us of what school districts receive these funds? Would that be possible?
Yes, we will.
That'd be awesome. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. I want to go back to the mayor's inquiry on infrastructure costs. So can you clarify, is there a number of buses that we would anticipate for the 45 million? Roughly how many new buses that would provide?
That would vary based off of what type of buses are being asked for, or in general.
General range, about how many you think?
That I don't have a clear number, but I mean, I would just from experience, I think estimating it should be around, I would say in the hundreds, I would say for now.
Where I'm going with that question is just kind of the coinciding infrastructure for those hundreds of buses. Is there an assessment of a cost implication for the infrastructure in order to, this folks who would like to, maybe they own the buses, they're older buses, they're polluting, they'd love to take advantage, but they wouldn't have the funding for the infrastructure. How do we reconcile those challenges so that when there's a new bus that is awarded, it comes with the appropriate infrastructure? Is that inherent in these awards, that with the bus award, there's a coinciding infrastructure, so that's not inhibiting access to the buses?
Yep. Mayor, a couple points to this. The school buses, the charging requirements for them are not as high powered as they are, say, for the trucks. Just because the duty cycles for these buses are not as long, right? So you have a standard route, you know what the route is, and they generally have, time between the morning and the afternoon sessions to charge these buses than they have overnight. So we don't need to, go shoot for the megawatt charger target that we have for the trucks. The chargers are usually lower powered for these buses, so it's easier to get the equipment installed and also the power for the buses. The second point is, the cost. If the 20,000 is not enough, there are other programs like, just the General Moyer program can support these. And so that will be opening up in the next couple of months, we anticipate, when we bring this to the board. So that can also be used to help stack with this program.
I'd like to have you bring to our attention if you encounter any circumstances that maybe there was an applicant who would have liked to apply, they would have qualified, but even with the amount of funding for infrastructure, and they were looking for other matches, it fell short and they weren't able to proceed, in that we could maybe refine for future awards the amount of funding that goes toward infrastructure, so that that isn't an issue. So if there's a way we can learn from this, maybe it's ultimately not an issue, and that'd be great to know too. But when we're done with this process, be interested in understanding a little bit more about that infrastructure implication, and if there's any issues relative to the funding side that's inhibiting those applicants. Also would like to know, once we have these, the RFPs out and the awards are completed, do we have a sense of how long it will take for the schools to receive the buses, and and do we anticipate any supply chain issues or any matters that would take years, or do we see months, as in we would like to see these school buses in service next school year? Is that too ambitious? I'm just trying to get a sense of, we're saying, yeah, let's do this, and then we're waiting, it's 3 years before the buses actually are in service.
So to that point, we can't anticipate the supply chain issues. In our last announcement we had, I think it was 2 years ago, several of the buses were delayed due to supply chain issues. And, some of the parts were made, actually the Ukrainian war impacted some of the parts manufacturing for the buses. So the air conditioning components were not available. So the buses could not be delivered until a new supplier came online. So, just in general, we are very quick in getting these contracts out to the school districts. We've done this for a long time. To speak on the supply chain, I think things are better now. We think things are better, but we don't know what the future holds. So we hope, it's going to take less than a year to get these buses, but we can't be certain about that.
So when it closes on April 18th and the awards are finalized, I know we don't have a crystal ball on supply chain challenges, but would you anticipate it optimistically would be a year? Yes?
Yeah, a year sounds reasonable.
Okay.
But we'll have to see what happens.
Okay. I hate to be a broken record, but I'll look forward to updates on how things are progressing on this front. So thank you, and do we have any public comment?
We do have one public comment online, Ranji George, but he has used his 3 minutes
Okay.
on a prior agenda item.
Okay, anyone else?
No other hands raised.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and close public comment, bring it back for the vote.
Supervisor Hagman, Mayor Locke Dawson,
Aye.
Mayor McCallum,
Yes.
Board Member Padilla Campos,
Yes.
Supervisor Wagner,
Aye.
Chair Rodriguez.
Yes.
Okay, item passes 6-0.
Thank you, colleagues. We'll move on to item 4. Appreciate being able to have guest speakers come to our committee from time to time. And today we'll have a update Schneider's commitment to a sustainable future. Item 4, introducing Jeremy Hawk, Engineering and Sustainability Manager with Schneider International. And I think Aaron has further introductions. Aaron?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So Jeremy Hawk is the Manager of Equipment Engineering and Sustainability at Schneider, a leading multimodal provider of transportation, logistics, and intermodal services. Jeremy's responsibilities include leading Schneider's battery electric fleet deployment and sustainable solutions within the carrier's equipment engineering team and the equipment purchase and sales departments. And Jeremy has been with Schneider since 2010, and he has a background in biomedical electronics.
Mr. Chair, if I could, before Jeremy begins, just a point of order.
Sure. On the prior item, the school bus item, there was no motion and second. So if we can do a motion, a second, and then do the roll call
I
again.
thought I heard a motion and second. We'll go ahead and, okay, thank you, Supervisor and Mayor. And so we have those noted. Do we want to go ahead and take the vote again?
Yes, please.
Okay, let's go ahead and do that.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Lockdawson,
Aye.
Mayor
Again.
McCallum,
Yes.
Board Member Padilla-Campos,
Yes.
Supervisor Wagner,
Aye.
and Chair Rodriguez.
Yes,
Okay, thank you. Item passes 6 ayes.
thank you. Okay, appreciate the attention to detail. We'll go ahead and go back to our guest speaker.
Hi, good afternoon. I'd like to start by thanking the board for allowing me to present on behalf of Schneider today and the great work that we've accomplished, we believe, over the course of the last couple years here as we've deployed battery electric trucks in Southern California. Next slide, please. So I think most appropriate to start with who is Schneider. Schneider has been around since 1935. As previously stated, we are an industry-leading multimodal transportation company. Give a little context into Schneider's scale. We operate about 9.4 million miles daily, have a 99.99% theft-free load ratio, which in today's world is a very lofty lift. So we're very proud of that number and are supported by a little over 19,000 associates worldwide. And lastly, we have operated over 6 million zero-emission miles to date since our EV deployment. And I'll touch on that a bit more as we get a little deeper into our slides here. Next slide, please. So as you think about what are Schneider's truly actions that we're driving towards, as we look towards 2025, the end of this year, we set a goal of reducing emissions by 7.5% per mile. I'm happy to say we are well on our way to surpassing that this year. Looking out to 2030 and continuing this pathway towards reducing CO2 emissions across our fleet, we have an effort to double our intermodal size and thus removing those miles that otherwise would be operated on the road and dramatically reducing emissions in a mode transition. And then as you look to the future, 2035, very lofty goals continue down that pathway with a 60% emission reduction across all of our rolling assets, and then reaching carbon neutrality on all of our company-owned facilities. Next slide. Now, let's talk a bit about what have we done in your backyard. In Southern California here, we are exceptionally proud of the effort and traction we have made at our South El Monte, California facility. Proud to say that this is a 100% entirely EV operated local configuration. So it is supported by 92 battery electric Freightliner e-Cascadias with clearly a dramatic amount of support, and I'd like to just step back and say thank you to all of the partners that we had through the JETSI program, as this would not have been as successful without the tremendous partnership of all of the entities that supported us here. This operation is a local intermodal drayage operation. As I'd stated, it is now 100% supported by EV day cabs. They operate right around 177 miles per shift, and about 30% of these 92 trucks run multiple shifts a day. In terms of the infrastructure, and I'll delve into this a little bit further as we get to the next slide, I believe here, but we are able to, with the infrastructure that we installed here, are able to achieve an 80% recharge rate across these 16 chargers in about 90 minutes. Next slide. Now, looking at the timeline, everyone's well aware this tends to be a long road to EV deployment at scale. Our program, I would say, was no different in that space. You can see here it's really a 4-year timeline to deployment, but a lot of that was pre-work through the grant process and working with the partners on that space and doing some pre-production BEV testing, so we could ultimately determine what operational configurations would be required in order for us to ensure that we can do this successfully at scale and not as a pilot. Over the course of that time, we really started to move into the latter half of 2022 and into 23, when we really broke ground. We were able to move forward on a construction pathway, which really we were able to accomplish in a pretty short timeline. There were only a few months of actual construction, and then we had our final 92nd BEV in operation by the end of December 2023. So we have been fully up and operational over a year now. The majority of our trucks actually came in the summer of 23, so the better part of a year and a half now that we have been operational at this location. Next slide. So what does the infrastructure look like to be able to support at scale? As I had alluded to, this was about a 2-year process. We added 4 1.2 megawatt power electronics NB stations to this site. So it is 4.8 megawatts in total capacity. That then feeds to 16 NB DC 350 dual cord parallel charging capability chargers, allowing us to charge 32 trucks simultaneously as needed. Overall footprint is right about 16,000 square feet. And our daily energy consumption, as you think about this in a different light, is the equivalent of about 2,000 homes daily. Next slide, please. So as I'd stated early in the presentation, we're extremely proud to be able to state that we have well surpassed 6 million zero emission miles through the operation of these 92 trucks. And as you can imagine, these miles continue to stack up at a very rapid rate with a completely transitioned fleet in South El Monte. So that's over 20 million pounds of carbon dioxide emissions that we have since pulled out of, or what would have been expelled through this operation, which equates to 2,100 gas-powered vehicles removed from the roadway each year. Next slide. So a lot of lessons learned as we have gone through this deployment process, both from an infrastructure perspective, as well as on the actual operational configuration of these trucks. As you think about from an infrastructure standpoint, of course, we ran into some grid upgrade delays. Nothing of dramatic scale by any means, but pushed us back a few months. We were very fortunate to be working with a tremendous partner in Southern California, Edison, that was able to minimize those delays. Similarly, a few hiccups on the permitting side, no dramatic lift there, but again, pushed us back a month or two there. Probably more so than those challenges, fall within the charging hardware landscape here over the course of that duration, right? Longer duration as we work through grant contracting, the actual site engineering. Over that duration of time, the hardware that we had selected was ultimately replaced with new upgraded hardware, which required us to backtrack a little bit. I don't see that honestly changing very much as this technology continues to advance at such a dramatic rate, which is beneficial for everyone, but it poses a slight challenge as you work through design, engineering, and construction to ensure that what you're installing is the latest and greatest technology available without having to backtrack too far through the engineering process. Yeah, as we started to transition drivers into these trucks, naturally there's change with that switch from diesel. So driving characteristics and the range variations across drivers allowed us an opportunity to ensure that we were able to coach our drivers as effectively as possible to minimize any range variation from driver 1 to driver 2, as an example. These EVs have significantly greater range variation potential based off of drivers' driving characteristics. So we've spent a tremendous amount of time dialing in our driver training and have since been able to reduce that range variation to a very minimal amount, which is more so driven by freight characteristics, grades that the drivers are pulling, and so on. And then equipment cost, of course, everyone is aware of the equipment cost headwinds that come along a bit with this technology in its entirety. Next slide. So I'd love to open it up, answer any questions I can.
Thank you, Jeremy. We'll just before we go to some questions, want to just thank you and your team for that commitment to following through on this multi-year journey. Certainly a lot of challenges on their way, but to hear about the 20 million pounds of emission reductions, and that equating to about 2,100 vehicles, gas-powered vehicles a year, is tremendous news. So I'll open it up to Mayor McCallum.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Question, who built the trucks?
So they are Daimler Freightliner e-Cascadia. So they're Freightliner e-Cascadias.
And how many of the 92 trucks are down for maintenance or not operational at any one time?
It's slightly higher than our historical diesel downtime would be. So we run several trucks in addition down than we would with a diesel. So I would say we run about a 5% increased downtime over that of diesel, which is normally in the 1% to 2% range. So not a dramatic number, but a few.
So of the 92 trucks, you have 98% of them in service at one time?
We're usually running at 95 to 98% range.
Well, that's reason I asked the question is I know other companies that have not as many of a fleet, but they're experiencing significant maintenance issues with the electric trucks, mainly dealing with software.
Yeah, we've been fortunate enough that we have a long-standing relationship with Freightliner, and we have great partners in the South El Monte market through their dealer network that have provided tremendous support since deployment. That was a bit more rocky early on, as you would expect with early adoption technology. That has since dramatically gotten smoother, and though again not to a diesel uptime equivalent yet, that gap has closed significantly. We're very proud of that partnership and what Daimler's been able to do to support us there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Colleagues, any other questions or comments? Oh, thank you, Mayor Locke Dawson. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Jeremy, fabulous presentation, well organized. The delivery was wonderful. I like how you ended it on lessons learned. Along the lines of Mayor McKellen, I had a question regarding, had to be a whole operational shift that had to come, I mean, that had to have impacts to your whole operation with the money, not just changing the trucks over, but I'm imagining it must be different to drive one of these things. So the drivers must have to get training, must be different to maintain them. So you're not using your mechanic shop like you would have used elsewhere. I mean, I didn't see anything in there about those you know, cost commensurate with the overhaul or putting it in there. I'm just curious if you had any numbers on those or if it was insignificant. Maybe it was insignificant.
Yeah, it's a fantastic question, Mayor. No, that I would say it was not insignificant. We did go through a complete re-engineering of our operation on site that entailed reconfiguring how we assign trucks to drivers, how driver schedules are configured, to ensure that we're able to meet the demands of our customer base while still allowing the added additional time for charging the trucks. So we are running more EV trucks than we had historical diesel trucks to offset a portion of that charging configuration or that charging time that had to be built into that engineering exercise. And there is significantly more training that we give the driver as they transition into one of these Freightliner e-Cascadias. It's a quick transition for them to understand how to operate the truck, but operating an EV truck efficiently is a much different challenge to overtake. So there's a lot, we place a significant amount of focus on how to operate the truck safely, but also how to do so efficiently. And that has been a fairly large transition for some of our more tenured drivers as they moved from a diesel. The drivers that come in and operate these as their first Class 8 truck, not nearly the lift in that case.
And
but ultimately,
well, I was just going to ask is that that was all the cost of that was borne by the company. So the equipment purchase came from the agency fund, but those extra costs were yours, right? So
correct. Yeah, those are all costs we absorbed as we made this operational change as we moved to zero at this location. Well worth it. The drivers absolutely love these trucks. We continue to get constant feedback from the drivers of how quiet they are, how smooth they are, how well they brake. They love going home not smelling like diesel every day. And so the feedback from the drivers has been fantastic. Most of our drivers, should you ask them to move back into a diesel, I would say would not.
That's fabulous. Oh, thank you. Thanks. I really enjoyed your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just curious, with your South El Monte location and the 92 trucks there, do you foresee other locations in your operations that are opportunities to duplicate this effort?
Yeah, absolutely. That is absolutely our intent. As I'd said early on, Schneider was founded in 1935. So for 90 years, we have felt like we have led the industry in advanced technology, whether that be on the diesel side or in alternatives. That effort continues and will remain as our focus as we look to move forward here. There are absolutely other locations where this type of configuration is a viable deployment solution, and we'll continue to move forward in those efforts.
Oh, and what would be some of the lessons learned that you would apply to those considerations of other operations and other locations, particularly in the South Coast Air Quality Management District service area, Inland Empire, Orange County, LA counties? Where would you kind of take and glean this experience and say, here are a handful of things that we would be considering? You mentioned some of the lessons learned earlier, but I'm just curious as to kind of what would be that kind of top line consideration areas.
Yeah, the two primary things that I would say come to mind are going to be operational configuration. I feel we've learned a tremendous amount over the course of the last year and a half here of where current state technology fits the demands and requirements of our customers. So that I would not say is a large lift. We have a great understanding of where that fits here now. The where the focus needs to be put more directly is honestly with utility lead times and grid capacity.
To that point, you had a nice timeline. It was about 3 years when you started this process. And thinking about it from a scheduling, what did you originally foresee the timeline to be versus what ultimately occurred?
Yeah, as it relates to specifically the infrastructure process, I would say we expected it to be about a year and a half. We ended up right around 2 years, so about a 6-month delay throughout the process. But I think that is a very appropriate timeline and respectable considering the nature and scale of this project.
And from the ongoing maintenance standpoint of your operations, do you see, what would be obstacles to seeing this type of continued fleet change for your operations, and just again trying to understand how we could duplicate this in the future with you and others? What should we look at as areas to really focus in on to be a partner in helping this come to fruition and other locations?
Yeah, of course, everyone's well aware of the upfront cost pressures that bring challenges with these types of deployments. So I won't spend time dwelling on that challenge. But working with partners, I believe in this industry that have a creative mindset on how to redefine their operation is going to be a critical aspect. The technology that exists today can fit a fairly widespread number of operational configurations depending on the duty cycles and demands of your customer. And being able to scale infrastructure accordingly without overscaling. I would say there's a lot of focus on large scale megawatt charging capability that is great and absolutely has a need in the industry. But I think in many cases, we may be thinking too large scale on the infrastructure demands and need to be thinking about operationally what engineering adjustments can be made to lower the overall demand while still meeting the requirements of a customer.
You didn't want to dwell on them, but just could you maybe give us a little bit on that point of upfront costs?
Yeah, so we know there's significant headwinds both from a rolling asset and from an on-site hardware and software perspective. Of course, in the normal diesel space, we are not making investments on diesel fueling. That's readily available off of every off-ramp in the state of California, probably. So that infrastructure cost is always going to be an upfront headwind. We have not seen those costs come down over the course of the last several years. We've actually seen those costs kind of continue to go upward. And then, of course, regardless of manufacturer, these trucks are more costly than a historical diesel would be today.
What's the difference in costs for EV versus traditional?
It's about 3x.
Okay, so can you give a ballpark what that 3x would be? So 80 versus 40 or?
Yeah, so for an EV, you're in the ballpark of $450,000, $500,000 in many cases. By the time you're licensed, registered on the road.
So about $455,000 for one truck?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you, Jeremy. Just great information today. Before we go to any public comment, were there any other questions, colleagues? Okay. And we take a public comment here. Do we have any?
We do, but there are no raised hands.
Okay, we'll go ahead and close public comment then. Staff, anything you'd like to add as far as anything else for the good of the order on this? Any observations or thoughts on comments that were made today, or things that we can be doing at AQMD to continue to help facilitate this type of success story? Any other thoughts there?
I think Jeremy very well covered, his experience with the infrastructure and the drivers with the trucks. And, it sounds like it's a very positive experience, but, we do hope these prices do come down in the near future, and that's going to have a bigger impact. So.
Thank you, Aaron. Again, I want to thank you, Jeremy, for your time today. A great success story really does give us reason for optimism, and continue to give us that enthusiasm here at South Coast Air Quality Management District to invest in these types of efforts and collaborate. We'll look forward to looking at those opportunities with you in the future. And thank you again for your time today.
Thank you.
Okay, that will bring us to any other business, colleagues? Seeing none, any other public comment for us today?
We have one public commenter online, Ranji George.
Okay, let's go ahead and take that comment. Ranji George, the floor is yours.
Yes, Chairman. Good afternoon. My name is Ranji George. We laid the foundation for zero emission technologies in the late 90s, early 2000s, and we're glad to hear that it's gathering momentum. On this topic of battery versus hydrogen, I continue to raise these questions. Most questions being asked are very soft questions, but I like to ask some tough questions. Namely, what are we doing about battery disposal? This is going to be a huge, major issue. We may need 20 to 30 huge battery recycling factories within Southern California to handle these flood of batteries coming in the heavy-duty sector and the light-duty sector. And those costs have to be also addressed. And who's going to pay for this? Is the public going to fund this, or the private companies? Take the issue of lead-acid batteries. We had two companies facing huge lawsuits, GNB, Exide, and And these are not only lead emissions, but there are other emissions from these batteries. This is causing serious harm to the residents in the working class area, EJ area, where they are located, mainly blacks and Latinos. And these are the very areas where the battery recycling facilities have to be located for nickel, cobalt, and lithium recycling. And Europe is taking a close look at it. They are putting standards on it. And Mr. Snyder, the gentleman from Mr. Snyder's company, they haven't addressed how are we going to collect these batteries at the end of the duty cycle? Where will these be disposed? Are there protocols? And if not, we are ignoring the concerns of working class residents here. This is almost like a class war. Middle class has declared a class war on working class, saying, oh, we are only concerned of air pollution, but we are not concerned of solid waste pollution, because we don't see that. Middle class will not see this solid waste pollution which is going to come around. And neither the environmental groups. I'm disappointed with the environmental groups. All come from white middle class areas, and they're all promoting EVs, which is good. It's a much better technology than petroleum and natural gas, but you need to address the battery cycle. Amprex, the owner of CATL battery, is the world's largest battery maker. Amprex has invested $3 billion for battery recycling. That's a huge amount of money. This is on top of all the other costs of extracting the batteries, packaging the batteries. These are all very dirty processes. Even though you remove CO2 during the operations, which is very good, it's zero emissions there, but during the making of the batteries and the recycling of the batteries, there are a lot of CO2s generated. Are we addressing that?
Thank you for those comments. And do we have any others in the queue?
No additional public comment.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and close public comment. Before we conclude, I will say that on that topic, we've broached it a number of times And I understand that generally the takeaway has been that we're not in the area of necessarily solving that problem while we were trying to deal with all of the requirements that we have in our mission. But I do have an interest in maybe having us understand some of the best recommended practices that we're seeing by those. We're remiss in that question maybe being asked today. So I'd like to have us maybe understand that in the future, maybe some of the AQMD funded projects as we are getting updates, to include in those updates an understanding of how our once the batteries are being disposed, what's happening there? What are we seeing as far as how those are being handled? Just for our edification, just for us to know, and seeing if we do see some good solutions that are being are handling it these days that we want to shine a light on. So that's generally speaking, I don't. This is not the first time we've heard that comment, and I just want to make sure we keep it on our radar for future on our future updates. Thank you. I don't know if does anyone else have anything they'd like to anything else for the good of the order before we conclude, or Wayne, if you'd like to comment.
I was just thinking that there are advanced battery recycling facilities, and perhaps it might be worthwhile if we looked at getting a tour for some of the board members to see how these batteries are actually being recycled, where it's being done, how it's being done. We can look into that and get back to the board. We've actually done this with 2 other board members, but I think for technology committee, this might be a good opportunity to get more insight into that. So we'll look into bringing that back to you.
Thank you. That's a great idea. And short of being able to handle all those logistics of a tour, maybe we could have as an intermediate step, one of those facilities come and give us kind of a general, we can invite them to be a speaker on a future agenda. But I do like the idea of a tour as well.
Yeah, we can certainly invite them. I just want to say that if we do this, it'll be an all-day event, and it'll be a long day event.
Yeah. So again,
Because they're out
so
of
the
state.
intermediate step would be what was that?
They're out of state.
Okay. Well, I think the likelihood of that type of endeavor are going to be filled with logistical challenges. So a great idea. Let's keep that up for consideration. But I would like, maybe sometime this year, we can have them by Zoom give us a presentation.
We can certainly ask.
All right. Thank you. Well, seeing there's no other business, as well as no other public comment, we'll go ahead and just conclude today's meeting, adjourn, and say our next meeting date is Friday, February 21st at noon. Thanks, everyone. God bless, and have a great weekend.